Welcome to my Only One Outlier podcast show, where I'll be exploring the data science career tips with the industry experts who can share their experience and journey with us. I am your host Nirmal, from a new grad to an early career data scientist, from a data analyst to a data engineer, or anyone who wants to start or transition their career into data science. We will bring you all the do's and don'ts to help you guide in your data career path. Hello everyone. I am actually very excited today to welcome Kartik to my Only One Outlier podcast show. I knew him through LinkedIn connection, and we also did one career event, data science career event. And to this date, I think that was one of the most successful events I had. A lot of views in YouTube, a lot of people signed up, and there was very useful questions asked. I think we covered data science plus ML engineering, and we invited Karthik to cover the ML engineering piece. He currently works in Meta as senior machine learning engineer. His prior experience is working at Amazon as an ML engineer. And I just found out that I was going through his profile. He also interned at Google. So basically all the FANG names we want in our resume, he got it. Today, we will learn more about him, his journey, and how his transition was from software engineering to ML engineering. I would like to welcome you to my show. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nirmal. Yeah, thank you so much. Excited for this.
Yeah. Very pleased to have the conversation again. So I just did a brief intro, right? And we want to know, my audience also wants to know a little bit more about you. So please walk us through your journey, so a little bit in a detailed intro way. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm Kartik. I am a senior machine learning engineer at Meta. Primarily, my experience and interests are in natural language processing, search, recommendations, e-commerce recommendations. Yeah, before Meta, I worked at Amazon at dynamic pricing team actually. Worked on a little bit on forecasting problems and long-term optimization stuff. Before Amazon, I did my master's from University of Minnesota in computer science, and also like primarily the experience was there also in natural language processing. And before that, I did my undergrad from a college in India called the LNMIIT. That's kind of short intro, I would say.
thank you. Yeah, obviously, the ML engineering is very hot in the market, and it's not a new job title, but it's getting more popularity these days. I do also get a lot of mentees asking me, how do I transition to, right? So if they are coming from data science background, I do have a pretty strong recommendation comments, because that's the path I'm kind of learning myself as well, because as a data scientist you're doing the applied side of data scientist is very impactful. But I do give some suggestions based on my own experience and feedbacks from my connections. I also get some candidates coming from software engineering background, right? So and we did cover this a little bit on our career event as well, but I wanted to touch upon in our show as well that people coming from software engineering background, right? So what are some of your suggestions
Yeah.
that if you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing as a software engineer, what you can do is understand the problem space well, because you are kind of already in the problem space. So you know what business metrics your team cares about, and what kind of problems the team is dealing with. Now, the second question here is if the team does not have ML problems to deal with, there are certain kind of problem spaces which does not require machine learning work. In that case, you really have to decide whether you want to align closer to an ML team. So I recommend everyone to either think about moving closer to a team which is interacting more with a sister team, let's say for in ML, or
Mhm.
if your current company does not allow it, maybe think about changing companies as well. And then once you've figured out that path, and you are working closely, or not even closely, but within the same problem space, you have someone from ML teams working on the problem space. you can then try to move forward from there. So after that, you can slowly start talking to your manager, think about how you can contribute. Most important part that you can create is the differentiator.
Mm-hmm.
As a software engineer, you already know how to deploy stuff. So learn about how to deploy ML models in production, what it takes to scale ML models, let's say to millions of users, what kind of models to deal with. And then once you have that idea, you can kind of provide a differentiate that, okay, you're a software engineer, you already have the deployment idea, what
Mm-hmm.
it requires. Now you have some sort of ML model deployment understanding as well. You can then start pitching to your manager about the projects and then slowly start collaborating more with ML teams within your org. So that's the short summary of what I would say, what I did and what I've seen other people doing who have transitioned from software engineering to machine learning space in the past. But of course, there are multiple paths as
Right.
well. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I think I really like the way that you put one point at find the sister team, or I mean, if you cannot, then even outside of your company that is doing the ML related projects, right? So that is very important when you are trying to build the ML side of the skills, because as you mentioned, they already coming up with software engineering skills of building it, deploying it, integrating it, everything, right? The CI/CD, whole DevOps pipeline, they are much familiar with. They just have to add the ML piece, and if the project is not ML related, there's no scope to learn, right? So definitely you have to figure it out and talk to your manager, ask, hey, is there any other projects that you can probably be part of it, right? Somehow. So that's very important. And I think that's actually very key. The other thing, very interesting, I think, before I go on, the other question that I had in my mind was the challenges and opportunities, right? So obviously, let's start with the challenge, right? Because everyone faces challenges in their journey. I did have my own fair share, and everyone look at it, your profile as like, okay, he's a senior machine learning engineering at Meta, and he was previously as Amazon, right? So everyone see the shiny part of it. Nobody
Yeah,
sees the other side of it, the struggle of it, right? So
yeah.
just tell us about some of the challenges in your journey and how you overcome it, right? So.
By the time I joined the industry, I already had around 2, 3 years of basically working in machine learning kind of problems in
Mm-hmm.
through my undergrad and my master's. And I think the first challenge that I faced was adapting to the software engineer mindset initially, because I think coming from research background, those two things differ very significantly in a way that as a software engineer, you are expected to deliver value very quickly, whereas in research, you're thinking about experiments and it can fail, might
Yeah.
not lead to any value. So that changing that mindset, that okay, delivering it at any cost, find if there is a blocker, how to solve that blocker, and then still continuing those kind of stuff. So having that mindset shift initially was a bit challenging, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, but that actually helped me in the longer term to become my differentiator, because I had the ML background now, and then I had the software engineering background, which showed me how to deliver value, what things businesses care about. So I can now combine those two problems and then move forward. So that's where I slowly had to make my differentiator. So when I tried to transition into machine learning, it's of course not easy because I don't have a lot of research experience by that time. I didn't have PhD, so I wanted to find a way to find my differentiator essentially, and how I can convince my manager or my team, that hey, I can deliver value in machine learning problems as well. I did that through basically combining those two backgrounds, and then
Mm-hmm.
eventually kind of figuring out that okay, I don't know how to solve specifically a research problem at this scale, and that's what I need to learn first, and then go more towards research part of stuff. So before jumping into a user problem, jumping into the machine learning infrastructure problem, and then how to scale models, and starting with that, and then slowly going more and more towards machine learning. So that took some time, and it took a lot of convincing and a lot of like, proving yourself again and again and again to eventually, transition to machine learning engineer and working purely in machine learning. So, yeah.
Interesting. I'll share with my audience that you also do the ML, the Substack, right? The newsletter, and they are actually extremely valuable. I read few of them, and one of them was also transitioning from software engineering to ML engineering, right? So I probably suggest all my audience or user to sign up for it. I'll share the link in the comments afterwards. There is a couple interesting points that you mentioned, and I wanted to bring it up. One was the get ready for compromise or something, right? So and that you have mentioned that you rejected a couple of the offers from Google, and it was a hard decision. Tell us a little bit about that. And the follow up on that was you also mentioned another very interesting aspect was delaying promotion, right? And that was something I found it very, very interesting. So I wanted to know your thought process or rationale behind it.
Yeah, I mean, so when I joined the industry, I had very clear focus in the mind that I want to work more and more in machine learning, basically. And I knew that it would take some time to convince people that I can work on it, without any prior experience, of course. Google used to be my dream company, and it was like I actually my reason to get into machine learning at that time was Google search and how cool it
Right.
was at the time. It was, but like what I realized was like at that time the team that I was getting in Google was Android development related, and
Mm-hmm.
the team in Amazon I was getting is dynamic pricing team.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of talked to like managers of both teams, and I kind of realized that okay, like both of them are like in the end like software engineering jobs, but
All right.
dynamic pricing will allow me to at least have an opportunity to work with machine learning. If not, like basically like once I go into Android development, like I know that I won't get that opportunity for sure. So and that will be like a separate path that I need to follow. So yeah, it was a very hard decision at that time
Yeah,
to to
I
to
would imagine.
to make, saying no to your dream company. But I was like, okay, like I'll go to basically what I feel at that time is closest to my goal, basically, or I can see the goal at least there. So I joined that, even though like let's say the Google offer was better at the time, and yeah, it was my dream company. But yeah, I was like, okay, that's fine. Yeah, we'll see what happens. And also, I wanted to work in Seattle. I was a bit hesitant to work in Bay Area, so that was
Mm-hmm.
another differentiating factor for that. So yeah, yeah. Now I think it's more even out. Like Seattle has grown itself like quite big into like software engineering, but at the time they were like very limited positions available in Seattle. So yeah, and yeah, in terms of promotion, it's kind of interesting. So when I joined the industry, yeah, I talked to my manager at the time that hey, I want to be in machine learning. But like the interesting thing that was my manager told me that okay, you need to deliver value first in your current role, which is actually a fair thing to ask, right? Like if you want to ask something, and I tell everyone this, if you want to ask anything to your manager, or you want to demand anything that any particular type of project, you need
Mm-hmm.
to prove it that okay, you can deliver value in anything that you're working on right now. Yeah, like I started with that, becoming a good software engineer, and what that lead to is I made sure that I'm delivering all my goals when I was a software engineering. And the focus at that time was making sure that I'm providing a lot of value to my org and everything. And what that led to is faster promotions, of course. So my manager was very supportive of my promotion. I moved quickly to, and then I also had a clear path to senior software engineer at the time. But I talked to a lot of people who were machine learning scientists in
Mm-hmm.
Amazon, and I kind of tried to get an idea what the expectation from a senior machine learning scientist is, and from a like let's say like applied scientist too is. And I realized that the expectations at a senior level is much bigger than when you're joining at let's say like entry level or a junior mid level
Mm-hmm.
machine learning engineer or scientist. So I made a conscious decision at that time that if I become a senior software engineer, moving laterally to the same level to machine learning position would be very hard, and the
Mm-hmm.
expectation will be very high, and it will probably hurt my path in terms of like make it like longer essentially than like
Yeah.
let's say I try to move to same level as mid-level engineer to mid-level machine learning engineer, and then try to move up from there, gather experience. So yeah, I mean, I told my manager that, hey, I don't care about promotion right now. My focus is working on machine learning. He was actually very surprised, and he kind
Yeah.
of tried to push me for, and like he was a great manager, by the way, but yeah, he tried to push me for the promotion, and I was like, okay, I have to focus on my goals first. I will like, there's a thing from Jeff Bezos, which is like regret minimization framework. So I kind of like read that like 6 months or 1 year back before that decision, and I was like focusing that, okay, what will I regret more? Will I regret becoming a senior software engineer more, or will I regret not becoming a machine learning engineer early enough more? So I kind of followed that and just left it to fate in a way. Like, we'll see what happens. I can always become a senior software engineer, but I don't know whether I'll become a machine learning engineer at senior level.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, now I can see the rationale behind the decision making process, because obviously I do totally agree with you that when we do lateral move at the senior level,
yeah,
and you are kind of like changing the career path from one role type to another, then yeah, the expectation level will be high, and
yeah,
you are just starting. You are kind of grabbing the understanding of domain and a lot of other things that comes
yeah,
with ML. So you don't want to pressurize yourself, right? So to meet those bar, and at the same time you're learning as well, right? So
yeah.
so I think that kind of makes sense.
And also, like, if you have to change the domain, and like if you have to, like, let's say take like go at a lower level, it also becomes difficult because now you've seen higher salary and need to take a pay cut. So I was like, I don't want to see the higher salary. It's okay. Like, that will be too tempting initially, and I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay, let's just yeah, stay where we are, and it will be easier to make the transition
yeah.
at that level.
That also makes sense.
Yeah,
You don't want to hurt yourself on the pay as well, right?
yeah,
So anyhow, so that's very interesting. So because those are very uncommon decisions, right? So I don't hear that very often. So I thought of bringing it up. But I'm glad that all the decisions you made kind of work out to your favor, at least to meet the goal of being an ML engineer, right? So there's definitely the compromise you have to be ready for, and now I see what you mentioned there on your
yeah. I
articles.
think it's true with any kind of role change, to be honest.
Yeah,
Let's say you're going from software engineer to manager or product manager or anything. I think you have to decide what thing you are choosing and what
right.
compromises you are ready to make for that goal change, because you will have to make some sort of compromises for that goal. Yeah,
Definitely, yeah, yeah. I myself have come across similar situations too, so I can relate. So now moving on to our next topic is, I usually love to cover this topic with everybody because that's one of the theme of my podcast is we all work in tech, we all are busy, the life gets in the way many times, and work is there always, right? So you have commitments, deliverables, and a lot of things. The balance of this technical demand, obviously in ML engineering field at that company, right, with Meta, and even with any other company, people always have their own responsibilities and deliverables, right? So how do you deal with your personal life and well-being, in a way blending your life with the tech, right? How do you approach that to recharge yourself once in a while? I think we need to take a break. Everyone need that, right? So yeah, what does Karthik do to blend the life with tech?
yeah. I think the biggest thing is planning ahead in a way. That's one thing that I've actually learned quite significantly, that if you're not planning ahead, it's going to like hurt you, especially at higher levels, because then you're dealing with multiple problems, and then of them will have their own deliverables. So you have to plan ahead when those deliverables will be, what's the cutoff date for those deliverables. As a engineer, you have to realize that there would be days which, like, you'll kind of like prioritize sometimes work more than, like some of your, like, personal life related stuff. Of course, you have to then balance it out with your personal life, right? So there will be days after it where you are focusing on your personal life more than work, for example. So it's very hard to do that like at individual day level. I would say like think about like at like week or month level rather than that, because there would be weeks that you're, chasing some deadline and you're focusing on that, and sometimes you'll work hard, which is fine. But then after that, make sure that you have a good downtime where you kind of like, working on more like easy problems, or like, let's say like, easy challenges, and then focus on life aspects more, balance it out, take breaks, of course. So and planning ahead helps you do that, because if you don't know your deadlines, or if your
Right.
deadlines is delayed, then you're just working for longer period of time, right?
Yes.
So planning ahead and making sure that, okay, this is my deadline is in March, then I can expect that I will work hard from March first week to March last, and then I'll take some break in April. That kind of planning will help you to balance it out. Otherwise, yeah, it becomes like very challenging, of course.
Yeah. Very good point. Yeah, I agree. Same thing I do usually too,
Yeah,
because obviously you cannot really mimic the same day every day, right? So it's not
exactly.
going to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah,
There is going to be busy days. The whole week or 2 weeks you're going to be stuck in the project.
yeah,
Then you can compensate that. Like sometimes if I'm not able to give a lot of time to my kids or family for that week,
yeah.
once the project is slowed down, I'll try to do more towards family
Yeah.
and try to balance it out, right? So I think that's what we have to do.
Another thing that I think as you grow in your career, I think one thing is like estimation of the time itself, like for certain project. I think that becomes very important, because
Yes.
I think initially I struggled a lot with, adding buffers, like because every project will have its own blockers. Like if you're working on a big project, it will have some blockers, and you have to expect that there will be some blockers. And the blockers can be two parts, like it will be known blockers and there will be unknown blockers. So
Right.
you have to kind of estimate times for both of them. And doing those like multiple times, you have to realize that, okay, these things are important, and that's when you will predict your deadline more correctly, and then that's how you'll be able to find time afterwards for your personal stuff as well. Yeah, yeah. So I think like it's not work life balance. One thing that I think it's again from Jeff Bezos, that it's
Bezos,
called
yeah, I heard this one too.
work life harmony. I think you
Harmony,
have to
yeah.
balance it out, and it cannot be like, okay, every day I'm working, focusing more on work, and it cannot be that every day I'm focusing on life. So yeah, it have to be like, find a balance.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You sound more Amazonian than
No, 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 no. Like it's not that. It's like it's only the only reasons, like I read a lot of these things, and
yes.
some of the things you learn early in your career that sticks with you. So those kind of stuff. Yeah,
Totally get it. I love his quotes too. I think I've seen his interviews, even the podcast with Friedman was great. So yeah, he's a great guy. So this is one good segue based on a couple of points that you mentioned. As you grow in the career, like your estimation and everything gets better. So one question I had was, I mean, you have seen as a junior ML engineer and a senior ML engineer, right? So how do you find the differences, or what are some of the key things that you are doing more now than you were, right? On what you miss as a junior engineer also, right? So if you can highlight a couple of things there.
okay, so the biggest difference between a senior and a junior is, I think, as a junior engineer, mid-level engineer, you are focusing more on finding the solution, the right solution to a given problem. But as a senior, your goal is to find the problem actually in a way. So you have to identify what challenges, like let's say you're working on a user-facing product, what challenges your users are facing, why the users are not interacting or liking your product, for example,
Mm-hmm.
what cohort of the users are not liking the product, and finding insights from that is critical, because then you will be able to understand, okay, what are the problems that I need to solve. And as a senior, your goal is to create projects for your whole team, like find problems and then how to solve those problems essentially. So it becomes more important to plan and understand all these users problems, and then of course also understand your business problems, and find balance or merge them into understanding, okay, this is the user problem and this is the business problem, how I can link those two and then find a solution from there. So that's what you have to do as senior more than, as a junior, like where you are given a problem and then you're expected to find solution for it. Like let's say, hey, I just improve this machine learning model performance, for example. So yeah, that's kind of like, I would say, the biggest difference as a senior.
Yeah. So yeah, I really like the idea, or at least the notion of finding the problem, then solution, right? Which is kind of shift the paradigm, right? So the
Yeah,
way of you thinking, like how do you interact with the other functional units within the org
exactly. Yeah,
to
yeah,
identify where can you help,
yeah,
or your team can deliver. So yeah, that's very important. I myself found that as well, that hey, as a junior, I used to think that hey, I just create work items based on my feature
yeah,
assigned
yeah,
and work on it to deliver, right? So, and even I had that bigger picture understanding, I was not
yeah,
at that layer to interact or at least come up with the problem myself, right? And
yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of comes naturally with experience. So as you grow more into your role and become senior. So
Yeah. And I think you mentioned a good point, that interacting with other roles, because when you're finding, like when you're working on finding problems, right,
yeah,
you often interact with other verticals like product managers or
yeah,
UX researchers or different verticals to understand and find a problem. Like any user facing problem will involve multiple verticals, right? So yeah, like that alignment, other teams becomes also critical in that sense.
yeah, yeah, true. All right, let's switch gear a little bit. I'm very much proponent of mentoring, and so you are. So I know that you always highlight in your LinkedIn post or in the blog that you always advocate for having a good mentors, So kind of wanted to know in your journey, in your career, who has been a significant mentor, and what are the important lessons you learned, or how did that help to shape your career?
I think like there has been a lot of mentors, to be honest. So like it's very hard to pick one, but
Yes,
if
generalize it.
yeah, but if I have to pick like two, I would say like my first intern mentor and my first manager at Amazon. Those two would be critical in the sense of providing some of the values that I kept with me for a long time. So uh, it's kind of weird, but like my intern mentor, like asked him the question that, hey, what it takes to be the best. Like he was a machine learning engineer himself, and then I asked him who's the best machine learning engineer for example, and um, like his advice was that a best engineer is the one who makes themselves replaceable in a way, in the sense that you've kind of automated so many things and you have like provided so much value that anyone can come and take your work and then work on it. So it's a different kind of advice. I feel like you don't get that quite often.
Mm-hmm.
But it stick with me that okay, it's more about how you are helping others, and that team is not dependent on you, but you're providing so much value that the team needs you. All your work, you've provided so much value that anyone can come and technically take your work, and you have enough of a documentation, enough of things automated. It's not relying on you to continue to provide value to your organization. So that was one. And yeah, my first manager told me that find your differentiator. This was the conversation that I was having with him around when
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to transition to machine learning. And he told me that, okay, you need to find your differentiator because, of course, someone who has 5 years of experience in PhD and then 3 years or 4 years of experience in industry, of course, I won't be able to perform at that level. So in order to transition, I have to find my differentiator. And my differentiator in my case was blending my skills of software engineering and machine learning to, like initially transition to machine learning engineering position. So yeah, like that kind of stick with me, that, always, whichever team, whichever company you're joining, find a way to differentiate yourself. It can be like finding interesting problems that the team can work on. It can be finding solutions to very critical problems that has been existed for a long time and nobody is able to figure it out. Those kind of stuff. So yeah, I would say was the best advice that I got initially in my career.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think that does make sense, right? So differentiator, I think I really like that, the last point. You just have to somehow prove yourself or stand it out, right? Yeah, and a lot of times I used to think, in my early career at least, is that happens yourself or within the team. If I'm working on the projects, that message is already coming across.
Yeah.
But it's not always, right? So you
Yeah.
have to sometimes prove your case, like why you pick particular project. You can even ask your manager that you wanted to work on some project that is challenging, like you mentioned, like that has more visibility in the org, So it's always you need to take a lot of initiatives from your end as well. So
Yeah, exactly.
and then mentoring helps obviously to guide you through that, right? So
Yeah.
because in the early career you were pretty much focused heads down on just doing the project and delivering, but you need to start thinking about the growth in the career too,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and that's where I think mentoring will come very
Yeah, I think
handy.
like if I have to say one thing that everyone should have, that's probably mentoring.
Yes.
And you can have different field, you can have different kind of things that you're working on
Mm-hmm.
or a different domain. But one thing that is common between, I think, everything is mentoring. I think that everyone should find for sure.
Yeah, thanks. Definitely. That's one key takeaway is find a mentor, right? So if
Yeah.
you have not yet. So then let's move on to another one that, obviously I talk to a lot of job seekers who is currently in the market, and market is unfortunately not in a good shape. But whenever I talk to job seekers or my mentees, some of them sometimes sound a little bit depressing, but they keep pushing forward, and that's all they can do. So, what are your advice for current job seekers, if you have any? Obviously, like my audience will come from that background, like they are currently in the market, right? So, any particular advice that you got on your time or through your conversation through other folks, so anything
Yeah.
will help.
So the differentiating yourself kind of works here as well. So the thing is you have to differentiate yourself with the there will be a lot of job seekers, of course, and you have to find a way to differentiate. And as a student, there are multiple ways you can, I would say, differentiate.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, it can be working with an advisor in the university that you are in. Like I was fortunate enough to work with an advisor always, even my undergrad and my master's, and work on projects that eventually delivered some value, and then of course demonstrate your learnings about those projects. So that becomes a differentiating factor, right? That most students who are in universities, they focus on, of course, graduating and then preparing for interviews, but you are not just focusing on that, but you're also developing your portfolio by working on interesting projects that is happening in the university, and then making sure, of course, you have internships. Like you can even talk to those advisors, because a lot of these advisors will have their own alumni network, and they can connect you with those alumni networks, and you can find interesting opportunities through that network. That could be your first way of like essentially building your networking strategy, that working with those alumni and finding whether there is similar or interesting opportunities within their companies, for example, and applying to those. You'll have a strong referral from the get-go, because those alumni know that if this student is working with this advisor, they will um, they will provide some value, for example. So yeah, I think that's kind of like, I would say, would be the one differentiating factor. There are multiple other ways, of course, you can learn outside as well. Anyone will take a course, anyone will take certifications, but how do you demonstrate that becomes critical. Like, write write articles about what you learned, write articles about what different things you tried, what worked, did not work, and post it somewhere. It can be on Medium, or it can be on LinkedIn, it can be anywhere, or GitHub even. Finding ways to demonstrate what you have done is critical to differentiate, I feel. Because when a resume comes to a recruiter, everyone will have likely a course or a certificate, or some outside learning, or a project, but what they don't have is pointers that support those things. Like, if you learn something, how do you what proof do you have? So yeah, having those kind of, like, I would say, the differentiating factor there. Yeah.
That's an awesome point. Yeah, I totally agree, because a lot of people, they do projects, they learn, they take classes, or as you said, I think everything falls on the general bucket, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a very good point that you brought up. When recruiter is looking at those resumes, I think even the skills will be same,
Yeah.
right? So now it's up to you how you added those additional factors to
Yeah.
prove your point. And that's why I also suggest, you start some learning series and keep accountability for yourself to
Yeah.
share this stuff, right? And that helps because now you are learning and doing something and writing something, and you're sitting with the folks.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
and you have certain tangible, artifacts to your case that you are doing something. If you are doing everything on your own, I mean, you are within the bubble. Nobody is
Yeah.
noticing or
Exactly.
nobody is
Yeah.
paying attention. And it's up to the job seeker or whoever is, you have to go that extra mile for sure.
Yeah.
There's no free lunch theorem works here, right? So,
Yeah, exactly. And I have some interesting stories around it actually that I had a friend in my grad, and he posted an article on Medium,
yeah,
and like it was observed by some recruiter or some hiring manager. I actually exactly don't remember, but um, yeah, he got an interview call from it. I
yeah,
mean, you don't know actually how you'll see it. Like I had another friend who posted something on Substack, and um, he got a reach out from one of the VC. Like he was a he was a product manager, and he got a reach out from VC firm. They read his article, they really liked it, the insights he provided on that article, and reached out to him. Even though the product, this thing has actually happened recently, so the market is tough for product managers even more so than, let's say, software engineering or machine learning position. And but like somebody saw his article and just reached out to him. So yeah, it's yeah, it works when you show your learnings. It works basically. Sometimes yeah.
yeah. That's a very good point. I mean, you don't know who is reading, who is gonna come across. Like it's just your reach is, I mean, possibly infinite right now. We live in that global internet era where anyone from anywhere can probably reading your stuff, and you never know that you might get that one email
Yeah, exactly.
that you need, right? So that's awesome. Yeah, so that's a very good topic. So now moving on, I think the current innovation, right? So what is, I mean, obviously in the machine learning industry, the things are moving pretty fast, and with the rise of LLM, GPT models, things like that, I'm pretty sure you have probably felt that uh, fast moving stuff on your work as well, right? So what are some of the emerging trends, at least within the ML or within your domain, that you find currently very exciting, and then you see there's a long-term value if someone is kind of picking up that domain to learn?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I am personally kind of excited about is how LLMs will kind of change recommendation systems. Like, I think that's my, of course, like I work in recommendations more. So it's kind of interesting to see how things are evolved around LLM.
Mm-hmm.
They are improving like each and every stage of recommendation system. So that's very interesting, especially like with multimodal LLMs, which can take multiple types of inputs and then
Right.
like take both the context, video, image into account, and then give a joint suggestion or answer to the question. I think that's pretty interesting. I'm excited to see what happens there. I think that's something that didn't exist before in recommendation systems. So would be interesting to see that. And another thing that I'm kind of very excited that's I think more like longer term thing, but I actually started seeing this recently in I review papers for some conferences, and it's interesting how LLMs are being utilized in computer vision actually. And like I think LLMs already brought a step function change in NLP, and I'm kind of excited to see what happens in computer vision because I think that's going to be text and image. Those are the two basic inputs. Text already had a step function change from LLM, and I'm interested to see how what happens with image and videos going forward because I think that will determine a lot of applications, different industries. Like it can be self-driving cars, it can be image recognition, or even your virtual reality and those kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm very excited how these two fields change with language models, and let's see.
Yeah, definitely. The interesting piece that you brought up, the computer vision, how does it benefit
Yeah,
from this current breakthroughs in LLM, right? So I
yeah,
think that would be interesting. Even if I think about it, like you mentioned, and we can imagine all our data that we have or we
yeah,
generate is surrounding either unstructured text, which is already covered,
yeah,
and the computer visions, right? So pretty
yeah,
much image and videos. And once
yeah,
we have that, like a significant improvements on these key areas, then I think there's going to be a lot of other breakthroughs, right? So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that will be interesting to watch.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
So, all right. So we kind of coming to our end of conversation, and this is the part I don't like much because I always enjoy the conversation. It's
yeah,
just going very nicely, and obviously we can probably find some other time and bring you on the show again
yeah, for sure.
to cover different topics, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
But let's try to wrap this up with your final thoughts on any life lessons, values, it has been beneficial to you on your ML career, how you have incorporated that to your work, or anything you want to share, your personal story, so this almost like a open floor for you to
Yeah.
share something.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of any lessons or values that I would say is, for me personally, it's been like finding the differentiator. That always works, no matter whether you are a student trying to get a job, whether you are a junior engineer trying to get promotion, or even like changing role, for example. So I think that's kind of like the biggest thing I would say is that everyone should try to do, like
Mm-hmm.
what differentiated value they can provide from others in the field, because that's going to determine how many job opportunities you have, how many promotion opportunities you have, and will also determine your general career growth, I think. And the second thing I would suggest is finding an interest space, domain that you like to
Mm-hmm.
work in. I think like everyone wants to work in machine learning, but machine learning differs a lot in different domains. If
Right.
you're working in self-driving car company, it's going to be very different what problems you're dealing
Yes.
with than let's say you're working in search or recommendation. So your your understanding of the area and the research you are studying and all those things will be very different basically. So having that kind of interest where you want to work in, what kind of domain you want to work in, that would be, I think, everyone should find, because that's going to determine like how you want to grow in your career as well. Because if you're changing domain again and again, you are not really going in depth of one particular domain, and it's kind of becomes a bit critical as you grow that you have some depth understanding of one particular domain. And that also proves that, okay, you can go deep into one domain and can take a role in another domain and go deep in there as well. So, yeah, I think that's two things I would suggest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, domain is definitely has a great value.
Yeah.
Even my own career, I think I was a data analyst in cybersecurity for a while,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
few years, and then I went to fintech. I wanted to try something different, and I realized I could have built the skills or anything, but then the passion or interest
Yeah,
also has to
exactly. Yeah.
align, right? So if you are not much interested on building like economic models, anything that relates to finance and doing deep down on that, I realized that if I could build the vertical domain on this one, but let me kind of like try to go back to my own security space because that's where I think I enjoy working with data. So that's another thing, like passion and working with data, because we work with data every time, right? So if you
Yeah.
don't like the domain, I
Exactly.
think,
I mean, yeah, even your cybersecurity is very, very interesting space, and it's very different from anything that you're going to work on in something else. So I think, yeah, that perfectly makes sense.
yeah. So we will come to an end. I was thinking when you were talking, so the differentiator came many times. So I was like, what are the top three key things that we discussed, or at least the key takeaways? Three things. I find it one is like find a mentor, and we all agree.
Yeah.
The be a differentiator, and that kind of like adds value on many things, like as
Yeah.
we spoke, right? So either you're proving going from junior to senior, or you're changing your career path anywhere, like you have to find that unique skills or something to differentiate yourself. That is one. Obviously, the other one, find your right domain and be curious and obviously open to learning, right? So I think those are a few things that we can summarize.
Yeah.
Anything that I missed and you wanted to cover, but I really appreciate your time today, and it was a pleasure having you and talk to you always.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love all our talks. I'm looking forward to more of our chats.
Yes,
And we should
obviously.
also, yeah, catch up sometime.
Thanks again for your time today, and I hope my audience or listeners, they will probably find some value out of it. I'm definitely sure they will. I'll share your information, blog, your LinkedIn. If you have not followed him, follow him. If you are looking for transitioning from software engineering or in a similar situation to especially anything related to ML engineering, I think he has pretty depth knowledge to share. Awesome. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you so much, Nirmal. Yeah, talk to
Yeah.
you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.